What's up, guys, and welcome to part 2 of Shooting Manual Photography 101 with VaporDNA. And last week we did shooting manual outdoors and actually getting some hands-on action. But today we're going to sit down. We're in the headquarters of VaporDNA. We're going to be talking about ISO, aperture, and shutter, and what they actually all mean and how they all tie into the photo. Topic 1, ISO. So ISO is the sensitivity of your camera's sensor. So I have here sheets of paper that I'm going to be using throughout this whole demonstration to show you what those different aspects mean. So starting with ISO, got a little light here, nice and bright, and then we've got pieces of paper that is going to be pretty much the sensor of the camera. When you take a picture with ISO 100, let's just say, you'll notice that the photo is very clear. There's hardly any grain, no degradation of the image itself. And the reason why is at ISO 100, your sensor is the least sensitive to light. Meaning, like these stacks of paper, I have probably about 5 or 6 sheets. If I stack them all together, quote unquote ISO 100, let's just say, your lowest ISO setting, which is the least sensitivity to light your sensor actually has. So ISO 100, quote unquote. You put it up to this light, and if you take a look at it, you can't really see the light coming through very much. You'll notice that some of the light does come through, but it's because ISO 100 is the least sensitive, you're not really seeing a lot of that light coming through and passing through this actual sheets of paper. So when you look at it, you'll notice that the sheet of paper looks white. There's no degradation of the image itself. That's what shooting at a lower ISO, the benefits of shooting at low ISO is because you don't degrade your image. Now let's say you're indoors and you need to crank up your ISO, so that means you need to crank up your sensitivity to light. And doing so, you're going to start thinning out this piece of paper to almost one sheet. Now, I'm gonna get one sheet of paper, quote unquote, ISO 3200, probably the most sensitive to light your sensor can get. And if you take a look at it, you can literally see the light coming through the photo. And if you look at the piece of paper, you can see all the little grains in there. Basically, you've degraded your sensor to its most basic form, and now when you take a picture in ISO 3200 or 1600 even, you'll notice that if you look at the photo closely, it's very grainy. And the reason why is you've upped your sensitivity to light so much that now your sensor looks like this when you take a photo. And when you compare it to ISO quote unquote 100, you barely see any degradation of the piece of paper. It just looks nice and clear, looks nice and white. You just see a little bit of the light coming through, but you pull it through, you can't see the fibers of the piece of paper. So I'm gonna turn this off, and essentially ISO is the sensitivity to light your sensor is adapted to. So the lower the ISO, the least sensitive it is. The higher the ISO, the more sensitive to light it really is. And the pros and cons of that right now, we're gonna talk about that really quick. The pro of shooting a low ISO is you get a much clearer image. And the pro of shooting at a higher ISO, you also have added benefits of getting the proper shutter speed in indoor or low light situation. The con of shooting ISO 100 per se, you can't shoot that indoors because there's not enough light. You're gonna end up stopping down your aperture or your shutter, and you can start getting some camera shake. And the cons of shooting at a high ISO, of course, means you degrade your image. Your sensor is so sensitive to light that it's almost as thin as a sheet of paper, and you see all the little fibers. So that's pretty much ISO in a nutshell. Let's move on to aperture. That's ISO. Now let's move on to aperture. So aperture, if you look at your camera, is your f-stop. You got your ratings from f3.5 all the way to f16. On this Sony 1.8, 50 millimeters. So the f-stop is 1.8, and I believe it goes all the way up to f13. So double check that. Actually, no, scratch that. This 50 millimeter prime goes all the way f22 on the aperture. So what the hell is aperture? Aperture is the amount of detail you capture in a spectrum from closest to furthest. So I got pieces of paper here lined up actually on the table. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I can count, UP. And 7 sheets of paper that pretty much identifies with the aperture focus range. So I'm pretty sure you've heard the term DOF, which is depth of focus, and shallow DOF, bokeh, or bokeh, as some people pronounce it. Bokeh, some people, it's just whatever, it's bokeh. It's those little round orbs in the background from like really nice portraits where you got the model and everything behind her or him is all just blurred out. So that's the depth of focus. And with these sheets of paper I'm going to show you what it means when you change your f-stop. So let's take one piece of paper with my dry hands, and let's say this is f1.8. And what that means is 1.8 is going to have this amount of focus from the actual light, the subject, the background. So this is 1.8. Now if I kick up my f-stop to say 5.6, let's add another sheet. So now you have 2 layers of information that's in focus. Let's kick it up a notch. Let's go f8 on your aperture. Okay, well, if you're gonna kick it up, let's add another sheet of paper. So now you have 3 pages, 1, 2, and 3 pages of information in your depth of field. So meaning that you have this subject in focus, I'll put that there. You have this subject in focus, put that there. And this thing in focus, I'll put that there. So now you have 3 layers of information that's being focused at f8. You can kick it up even higher. Let's say you want to kick your f-stop up to f11. Add another sheet of paper. So now we have 4 sheets of paper, meaning we have all this room of focus. And that is what depth of field is how much information within shallow to deep is in focus of the image. So f1.8, very shallow depth of focus. Like literally it's just this and everything else on is out of focus. f11, you got 4 sheets of paper all the way there. All of this information is in focus. And this is gonna come to play when you do portraits or landscape. So as a landscape artist, what you wanna actually focus on is getting everything in focus sometimes. And if you're gonna shoot landscape, you wanna shoot at a lower aperture. Now, this is where it's gonna get a little weird. If I say lower aperture, it literally means the size of the aperture. If you look at your actual camera and look at the little blades, the smaller the blade, the higher the number. So this little circle right here, that's f22, let's just say. And if you wanna shoot at its widest, it's actually f1.8 or 1.4 in some lenses, 1.4. So the larger that circle, the lower your depth of field. So when I say shooting at a high aperture, like f22, it means you have a smaller aperture. So with that said, that's the most confusing part is going from f1.8 to f22. It doesn't mean the size, it's actually the reverse. Kind of get me there? Weird, huh? Vip, you get me there? I know you get me because you're a photographer. But as a standard consumer, layman's term, f1.8 means huge aperture. And f22 means tiny aperture, meaning lots in focus. f1.8, big aperture, means low depth of focus. We're good? We're good? Got that out of the way? Okay, so aperture basically means that lower that number, the lower amount of things you're going to be focusing on. 1.8 all the way up to f22. So f22, you have all of this range of focus. f1.8, just this. Everything else there, out of focus. So what is aperture? Aperture is the amount of focus in your depth of field. What's in focus. So if you're shooting portrait, you want to shoot between 1.8, 2.8, f4. You're shooting landscape, you want to have everything in focus. 3.5, 5.6, f8, f11, f16, f22 even. So the higher that number, the more it's going to be in focus. So that's pretty much aperture in a nutshell. Let's move on to shutter. All right, so now we've gone over ISO, we've gone over aperture, what those two things mean. Last but not least, let's talk about shutter. Shutter is basically the speed of how your curtains or mirrors will open and close to expose the subject. I'm gonna turn this on really quick, just to give you an idea what shutter is. I'll put my face to it, and I'm gonna blink. That's shutter. And basically the shutter is just like your eyelids. The faster your shutter, 1/2000th of a second, the faster you blink. Now, when you start going slower, like 1/80th of a second, 1/60th of a second, you start to blink a little slower. And what it does is when it's opening up to show the image, it's exposing what is being shown. So 1/2000th, 1/60th, 1 second, 2 second, bulb. And the shutter is how fast your actual your curtains will open and close, meaning that if you're shooting sports, you want a fast aperture because you literally want your camera to go boop, and that's it. Open, close, open, close. The faster the shutter, the faster you take the photo, meaning that anything action related, you'll be able to capture it. Someone swinging a bat, hitting a ball, you want 1/2000th of a second, if not faster. You want some guy catching something or even a balloon popping, you want it at 1/2000, 1/4000, fast shutter so that you capture that perfect moment. Now, there are instances where you want to slow it down. And the reason why is because say you want to take a picture of a waterfall. Taking a waterfall picture and freezing everything, okay, yeah, it looks great and all, but if you slow down your shutter and you get that flow of water, it's sex, solid sex. And how to do that is you literally slow down your shutter and you go from 1/2000th of a second for a still frame and you go 1/20th of a second, 1 second, 2 second, 4 second shutters. Basically means you open up your curtains long enough and let it close to actually capture that flow of movement. Works really well with light trails when you're going outside. Have you ever seen those photos where it's just the street at nighttime and you see streaks of like the headlights of the cars? And how they do that is prop it up on a tripod and they literally take a picture and they open their shutter for at least 1 second, if not longer. It's just boom, and then you get that streak of light. Same thing with waterfalls. So shutter plays an important role with how you're going to take the photo. If you're shooting sports, go fast. If you're shooting landscapes with actual water movement, only one little particular spot is moving, like the sky, the clouds, you want to slow down your shutter so you get that natural flow of movement. Now, with that said, there is something called a camera shake, which makes your photos blurry. I'm sure you've all encountered it, taking pictures indoors with very subtle lighting. And you take a picture and you're like, damn it, it's blurry. You take a picture again, it's blurry again. What the hell is going on? Your shutter's too slow. Meaning you need to kick up your shutter speed faster than 1/60th of a second in order to make sure you're gonna reduce camera shake. And in order to do that, you need to understand ISO and your aperture values because all of those pertain to the perfect exposure. Like we did during Photo 101 Shooting Manual Part 1, you notice that I kicked up and changed my ISO during certain scenarios. Outdoors, I'm at a lower ISO, and when I'm indoors, I'm in a higher ISO. And if I'm shooting subjects like models and mods, I'm gonna be shooting it at a shallow depth of focus, low f-stop, 1.8, f2, 2.2, 2.8. If I'm shooting nice landscape subjects, I'm shooting at f8 and up. I want more in focus. Now, if I'm indoors, I wanna make sure that my shutter speed is at least 1/60th of a second. If it's lower than 1/60th, you have a potential of getting camera shake. It's gonna be blurry. And if you're outdoors, you really don't have to worry about that unless it's cloudy. So that's pretty much shutter. It's just the speed of how your curtains open and close, just the way your eyes open and close. So if you put it all together, you've got ISO, your paper, your aperture, the amount of pieces of paper of information that you can take a picture of and have in focus. And then your shutter speed, just opening your eyes, opening that curtain, and taking the picture at the perfect speed. So that's really it in a nutshell with ISO, aperture, and shutter. Those are the three most important factors when taking photos. And it's going to pretty much develop while you take pictures. And you can't understand it all in one go. You have to get hands-on. It is a firm belief of mine that your best photo is your photo that you've taken after 10,000 frames. It's true, and I'm still learning. I've taken over 100,000 frames in my lifetime as a photographer, and I'm still learning things that's new. It's awesome. That's the great thing about photography. You're always learning. Someone who tells you he knows photography, all ins and outs, bullshit, lies. Because as a photographer, as an artist, you continuously grow. You never peak. And if you peaked, you ain't experimenting, you ain't doing enough to try to go beyond what you already understand. So that's it. That is aperture, ISO, shutter in a nutshell, guys. Thank you again for joining us on a Photo 101, talking about manual in this two-part segment. I don't know what I have next up. We'll see. Got a lot of tricks up my sleeve to show you guys and really share and make you a better photographer. So thanks again, guys, for joining us at Photography 101 here with VaporDNA. And if you like what you see, if you really enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you get notified every time we drop a new video, because we've been dropping them at least 2 to 3 times a week. And in the future, we have a lot more stuff in tunes for YouTube. So hope you guys really enjoyed it. I love doing these kind of photography tutorials. I did it on my channel long before, and I did it again here. It's fantastic. It's a great learning tool for everyone. So that's it, guys. Hope you guys had a great New Year's and a great holidays with your family and friends. We'll catch you on the flip side here at VaporDNA. And like I used to say, let's all eat, sleep, vape, and repeat.